Hi everyone, welcome to Starsight. My name is Samia Vasa and I'm an astrologer and a tarot reader. I'm recording this at the time that Mars is still in Libra, but at the anaretic degree, which means it is at the last degree of a sign. This is usually very difficult energy because whatever Mars has learned in Libra or whatever it has accumulated in Libra energetically, there's a little bit of a decisive energy now. There's a little bit of an ending. So if Mars in Libra this year has learned about injustice, if Mars in Libra in this year has learned about imbalance, about having to choose oneself in a way that is deeply distressing to the other. All of that has come to a decisive climax at this time. With the South Node being in Libra at the moment, this Mars transit has been heavy. The thing with the South Node is that wherever it is in the chart, wherever it is, whatever sign it's transiting through, there is a prompting there of having to sacrifice the values of that particular sign, having to turn away from the values of that sign. Sometimes that's in our favor. So what are Libran values? They're balance, respect for the other, wanting to understand the other, harmony, bringing everything together in a beautiful big picture at the level of thought. Now with the South Node here, it's like we are learning to choose imbalance, or life is choosing it for us. We are learning to choose how to walk away from relationships, even when they promise balance, or there is beauty in it, there is harmony in it. We are being prompted to walk away from relationships where the harmony is not allowing us to grow, where the harmony has become a kind of beautiful comfort zone where we are no longer able to access our desire to grow. And this desire to grow right now is represented by Mars. So while the South Node is in Libra, the North Node is in Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars, astrologically, Mars represents the principle of individuation. What that means is Mars represents the instincts within us that push us to be ourselves. This can be at a biological level, like it is Mars that pushes the baby out of the womb. It can be at a social level. Mars is what is pushing us to stand out, to claim our excellence, or to show that we are different. Mars can function at a spiritual level, where we want to separate from the matrix in which we are embedded, and we want to truly access the essence of uniqueness within us, which is the soul. But the paradox of spiritual truth is that the soul is also what is going to take us to oneness. So Mars represents this whole journey, spiritually speaking, of pushing us to individuate, pushing us to become this very particular singular individual who is tapped into their soul. But through that extremely individuated particular journey, what we end up reaching is a sense of oneness. So typically in the early stages of a Mars transit, or in the early stages of our incarnation as a spiritual being, Mars is concerned with cutting away from the self, from the body, what is considered to be the mother. This could be the physical mother, so the umbilical cord is cut. This could be the physical mother in that the child grows up and starts demanding independence. It could be the world around where the child starts saying, no, that's not what I agree with. It's the teenager rebelling. Mars results in the person having again and again, we have to cut away what is the majority structure around us, whatever is the place of the mother culture, the mother preferences, the mother body, and we have to cut it away. We have to show the strength of separating from others, from that giant other, whatever that is, culture, society, norms, to become ourselves. Now, for those of us who have Mars in a difficult place in our charts, this individuation can be very, very painful. We can have a lot of trouble expressing this instinct. And Libra is one of those difficult places for Mars. So it's the opposite of Aries, the home sign of Mars. So in Libra, Mars is considered to be in exile, and it is not able to separate from relationships easily. It is not able to do this work of individuation easily because continuously it is drawn into the field of the other. Continuously it is drawn in the field of what the other needs, what the other thinks, why the other does what they do. And so instead of being decisive, instead of being able to say, but this is what is right for me, there is a very profound balancing act that Mars has to perform in Libra, which is to, on the one hand, acknowledge and let the instinct to separate emerge in its fullness, and on the other, be very clear-eyed about what it's going to do to the other person or to the relationship or to their own life. Clear-eyed because Libra is an air sign. Saturn is the planet that exalts in this sign. So in this sign, clear, logical, ruthlessly rational rational judgments are really prioritized. Whereas Mars is not about rational action, it's about impulsive, fiery, strength-oriented action. Because you can't, when you have to separate from something that you're so attached to, like the mother or like your family, even when you're, let's say you're studying and when you're graduating, even if that's not a hostile separation, but still you have to mentally, physically, spiritually, you have to separate from the fact that you are no longer a trainee. Now you have to work as a professional. So with every phase that we outgrow, we need Mars energy to push into the next phase. And that's not so much about rational thinking and building yourself up. It's about that burst of energy. There's nothing else to do now. I have to do this. It's like the moment before you dive into the cliff. If you're into those kinds of sports, you could have prepared yourself, you could have seen a lot of videos, but in that moment, all of that's not going to help you. In that moment before the dive, you just have to bring up that instinctive burst of fire and you have to plunge into the cliff. So in Libra, Mars is not able to do that. Mars has to think and think and think. And so some of the shadowy expressions of Mars in Libra could be passive aggression, because a part of you wants to separate and then the other part of you feels bound to the other, or bound to the circumstance, or bound to whatever it is that you want to break away from. Another shadowy manifestation of Mars in Libra is indecision. It's like just not being able to decide what it is that you want. A third manifestation could be people pleasing, where in your mind, in your heart, you have already separated from the other, or you've decided you will, but at the level of behavior or at the level of the relationship, you're waiting for the right moment. You're sort of manipulating the situation to try and protect yourself, while in your heart you're already like, I don't want to be here. Mars in Libra, like all planet sign placements, is complex energy. And now we're moving. Mars is now moving into Scorpio. And Scorpio is the home sign of Mars. It is the watery, feminine home sign of Mars. And here Mars behaves a little differently than it does in Aries. In Scorpio, this process of individuation takes place at an intensely inner dimension. So if you have Mars in Scorpio in your natal chart, if you have it natally, look at what house it falls in. You might realize that, whatever happens in the realm of those house topics, it's very intense for you. You may be drawn almost against your will into these intense intimacies with whatever house topics Scorpio represents in your chart. You may get into, let's say that if you have Mars in Scorpio in your 10th house, in the house of career and legacy, you may be drawn into these very unwieldy intimacies with colleagues or with whatever it is that you work with. So much so that you're not able to distinguish what is yours and what belongs to the other. There's a kind of merging that's very hard to manage. You might also find that if you have Mars in Scorpio natally, then in that particular house of your chart, you're very intuitive and you experience the other person's darkness or the other people's darknesses almost immediately. Like you meet them and you feel it. But there could be a curiosity within you that doesn't allow you to separate from that darkness, that doesn't allow you to say, well, this is normal and natural, and this is something that the other person is not able to manage, and so this could harm me. most likely are not able to do that with Mars in Scorpio, because there is a kind of pathological curiosity within you to explore darkness, whatever that means to you. It could be you listening to true crime podcasts, it could be you watching horror media, it could be you investigating mystery airplane crashes, it could be you studying conspiracy theories, or it could be as simple as you meeting people who don't have it together, but you can't help getting involved with them. Or even if you do meet people who have their shit together sort of adequately. None of us have it together in a complete way, but if they have it together in an adequate way, still something of your darkness makes contact with theirs. And so even if on the surface both of you are okay, once you get into a relationship, all kinds of ghosts are released, the Pandora's box flies open. And why is this? So the thing with Mars and Scorpio is that spiritually, here individuation takes place through the journey within. When Mars is in Scorpio, we want to figure out who we are at the most instinctive level. And instincts are not pretty. Instincts are violent. Instincts are the basis of civilization, but then it's also civilization that needs to keep the instincts out. So in this very simplistic story that we tell ourselves about how communities were formed, we say that, human beings or species, members of a species, they come together so that they can protect themselves. That's an instinct. But with human beings, this needing to protect ourselves, though that instinct may have been at the basis of social group formation, then that also becomes something that we want to keep at bay. And so we don't like any kind of crime in our midst. We don't like being reminded that we are continuously at risk of physical decimation. We want to live in neighborhoods where there is no crime, where we are safe all the time. We have relegated the work of protecting our borders to a whole force of people who live a very different life than us. Army life is very different from civilian life, right? So civilization, this is a very simplistic example, but I hope you get the logic that though civilization could have begun on the basis of needing to protect ourselves, then slowly we want that need. We don't want to look at it. It has to become something else. It has to be swept under the rug. So wherever there is a high crime rate, we are embarrassed. We are embarrassed by it. When someone says Delhi is the rape capital of India, we don't want to do anything about it, but we are embarrassed by that statistic. Don't shove it into our faces that we have to protect ourselves. So there is violence around us. So instincts are never pretty. Some instincts are, for example, like the need to protect ourselves, but also the need to attack someone else. Even think of birth, think of the physical event of birth. It is not pretty. The person who's giving birth, their screams are primal. The child who emerges out of the womb, there's nothing pretty about it. It's full of blood and gross bodily fluids. or even us having to go to the bathroom every day, whatever comes out of our bodies, not pretty. So at the level of instinct, there isn't any beauty in the Venusian sense. And Mars in Scorpio wants to get to this ugliness at the heart of us. Mars in Scorpio has this drive to get to this ugliness, and through that ugliness, break out into soul awareness. In esoteric astrology, Mars in Scorpio is understood to be the last frontier of the battle between the personality and the soul, between the lower self and the higher self. So when Mars is in Scorpio, it's like the lower self, the instincts. By lower, I don't mean inferior at all. It's a very objective term. Lower as in, well, it's hard to explain it in terms that don't sound value loaded, but the way I am using it is value neutral. So when Mars is in Scorpio, we have to experience this face-off between the instinctual self and the civilized self, between the physical body and the spiritual body, between the personality and the soul, between the ego and God. But it's not with Mars in Scorpio. It's not about choosing it out of the goodness of your heart. It's not about choosing God because you're peace-loving. It's not about choosing the higher self because you want everyone to do well. It's about taking the side of the ego. It's about taking the side of your lower self and perishing in battle. It's an extremely sacrificial energy, but on the surface or in the beginning of the process, it looks like it's really egoic and it looks like it's really arrogant. Wow, are you going to fight against God? Wow, are you going to fight against soul? But actually, it's a sacrificial energy. It's going to take the side of the entity or of the energetic formation that it knows will die. But that's the only way of true transformation. It is through death. It's not through choosing God out of the goodness of your heart. It is to be on the side of the evil within us and to perish with it. And through that death, we are then born into awareness of the soul. It's a path of defeat. It's a path of humiliation. It's a path of absolute devastation. And so if the person who has Mars in Scorpio is not spiritually aware, they can end up manifesting or they can end up choosing a very literal level of this devastation, which is, let's say, choose relationships where they know that they're going to perish. Or like that earlier example with if Mars in Scorpio is in the 10th house of career, then choosing a career where they have to continuously be a very egoic entity and they have to continuously assert their power over others. Or the opposite, where they get into a career where they have to be extremely subservient to others, where there is a power imbalance, where they're meeting, instead of them embodying this harsh, ugly, instinctual entity, they get into relationships with harsh, instinctual entities who don't have it under control, who haven't sublimated their instincts in a way that is balanced. So if you have Mars in Scorpio, then one of the things that you are here to learn is that you have to transform that battle with your soul, the instinctual battle with your soul, into something that is internal. It is already internal. Even if it's happening outside of you, what you have to understand is that the real battlefield is inside. And your job is not to suppress your instincts. Your job is not to say, I'm not going to be envious, I'm not going to be protective, I'm not going to be defensive, I'm not going to be an asshole. Your job is to witness the ways in which you are an asshole. And to create a sacred space around you where you can witness that, where you can let those parts of you emerge into light so that they can perish. But understand that you will perish with them. So you will have these regular death-like moments where you will come face to face with something ugly in yourself and it will really crush you. But by accepting it, by perishing with it, every time you do it, you will be initiated into a higher awareness of why you're here, or what your soul energy is, or simply a bodily experience of oneness, of God, that'll allow you to keep going, that'll help you see this whole process with so much perspective. Now, Mars is entering Scorpio, and this is something that all of us, not just people with Mars and Scorpio in their chart, but this is something that all of us will now be experiencing through this transit. So wherever Scorpio is in your chart, understand that you're going to have this instinctual battle with the soul. Understand that you're going to have to do the very difficult work of letting the ugliness of your instincts emerge. You have to let it emerge, you have to witness it, and you have to be with it, and you have to die with it. I mean death in a symbolic sense, of course. So this transit has great spiritual potential, but it also has a great potential for shit stirring, because it's very hard to reach that final moment of battle. What most of us do is just we start becoming aware of those instincts, and then we start looking for ways to suppress our awareness of it, or we start looking for ways to express it, but in sort of manageable ways. Like, I'm envious, so I'm going to be harsh to the people who are envious to me. Like, let's say that I'm a B plus student, and I'm very, very jealous of the person who gets an A plus. I don't know how to deal with that, so I'm going to be really harsh to the person who gets a C minus. Like, I'm going to feel really superior towards them because I can't deal with the inferiority I feel, or I can't deal with the lack I feel in my body. So most of us are not able to reach the point where we are one with our envy, where we can perish with it. Instead, we find ways of keeping ourselves alive by letting the envy out in small little doses. Let me just do this, then it's managed. And so through this transit, we will see a lot of us within us, we will see ugliness emerge. And we might not have it within us to properly manage it, to properly transmute it. And so we'll end up acting in ways that are really harmful to ourselves and to others. Mars in Scorpio is also going to be a good transit, in the sense that because Mars has dignity in Scorpio, it's also very decisive. So if you are already invested in your inner work, if you're already doing shadow work, then this can be the time when you're really able to shift the energy within you in a decisive way. You're really able to perish. You're really able to let the soul win, to let God win within you. So what that could look like at the material level is you may decide to let go of a career. You may decide to let go of a relationship. You may decide to make a big change in your life. You may decide to give up something that used to be really important to you. This could be a fantastic transit for people who are addicted to something. And understand that, it's not just dramatic addictions like drug addictions or alcohol addictions. We can be addicted to very small things in our lives. Like we can be addicted to attention on social media. We can be addicted to sugar in the kitchen. We can be addicted to feeling of a super full stomach all the time. We can be addicted to feeling good in our relationships. That's a problem, right? Feeling good is not a problem, but if you're addicted to feeling good in a relationship, then there isn't enough space for the wholeness of the relationship to flourish. The spaces in the relationship where there is tension, where there is conflict, where there is anger. So Mars in Scorpio can be good for all of that stuff, where we get the strength to face ourselves, to face the ugliness within us and not flinch and let it die. And let ourselves understand that yes, a part of us is dying. We are dying with it. But this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do, because otherwise the suffering for the people around us, our own suffering, is too great. As a B+ student, I am giving the C- student hell. This is a transit when you understand how you're being really unkind to others because of the ways in which you feel deprived. So massive, massive potential here for us to understand ourselves. With any transit in Scorpio, it's always powerful. It's always a powerful time for us to do shadow work. But with Mars, the shadow work is all about individuation. It's all about us getting to our particular uglinesses, our particular feelings of lack and deprivation. I hope that this is a powerful transit for you, in the sense that it allows you to see something real within yourself. If you don't know where Scorpio is in your chart, you can note that in the comments. You'll have to tell me your rising sign, and that way I can help you understand what are the house topics where you're likely to see the shadow work take place. All right. Talk to you soon.